Loved ones, today is session 1 for this Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship class 3234. I have just 3 or 4 objectives in mind. I'll start with a short introduction of me. That will be quick and not painful. I'm going to review the syllabus because the syllabus is a very big deal. It is essentially the contract between faculty and students. So, expectations, timelines, that sort of thing. Once I review the syllabus, we'll take a quick look at Dropbox. It is active and I want you to see how it's structured. And then I'll discuss briefly the fact that I will not be using Gradebook for this summer session. So, by way of introduction, I have, academia is my 3rd career. I'm a former infantryman. I spent 4.5 years on active duty in the Army. Did a tour in Vietnam as a reconnaissance platoon leader and voluntarily separated. I went from that, not immediately, but I went into business, of course, and literally practiced accounting in Atlanta for 17 years. I have the bachelor's and master's degrees in accounting, and for 3 years I was a staff accountant, and for 14 years I was a principal in a firm. So I'm keenly interested in the ability to connect what we learn with practical applications. And sometime in my middle 40s, I realized I loved adult education, and I went back to school and got a degree that equipped me to become part of the faculty. So this is my 28th year as a member, 28th year of post-secondary education. 12 of it here. I've been at Southern for 12 years. So again, I'm not important or special. It just seemed well to give you an introduction. I don't know if any of you have ever had me before. It seems improbable. Could be. I mean, you could have had me for like a principles course or something, but this is the first course in the entrepreneurship and innovation emphasis. And I don't know if I've ever had any of y'all before. So I want to talk about the syllabus briefly. Clearly, Folio's been active for some length of time, and I've talked about a lot of these protocols in that rules of engagement video. But I want to go through the syllabus in depth because, again, it is so critical. I want to mention one thing, though, before I start opening up items that have already been posted to Folio. This section of Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship, I think, may be the first time that my department has ever presented an elective course in entrepreneurship in a summer school session. The reasons are twofold. One of them is a resource constraint, the number of faculty, the number of classes. The second thing that's true is there is primacy to courses in the core, to principles of management or strategy, things that people have to have. Nobody has to have an elective course in entrepreneurship. So it's quite rare. I've had this conversation with my chair, and I understand his perspective. I object to teaching this course in the summer because in a 15-week semester, there is a great deal of heavy lifting, research, writing, that sort of stuff. And it's very difficult to take 15 weeks of intensive activity and compress it into 4.5. I think I've done it competently. But you're going to get the same exact experience from a learning perspective that you would have had if this were in a traditional semester. It's just that in terms of your work product, I've scaled it back. I've reduced the scope of what I'm asking you to do. You'll go through every step of the process, and I hope achieve some reasonable mastery over it. But I've lightened the load because, as I say, you cannot do in 4.5 weeks what we could do in 15. So, first time ever for an elective course in a summer school session. In the syllabus, I'm going to go through all the administrative points, and then I'll start to talk about the specific tasks on which you'll be evaluated. Excuse me, please. I don't have any sort of a clicker, not that it's a big deal, so I've got to get up and go to the console. I'll be back in a moment. My contact data are at the top. Clearly, I have an office phone. That's not a good choice in terms of reaching out to me. I'm in my office 45 hours a week, and I check email regularly. I don't keep it open all the time because I have plenty of other stuff to do, but I urge you to use that email address to contact me. If you're in the building, my office is on the first floor of Parker College, and I welcome you always. Required resources. I've chosen those words carefully. You have a required resource for this course. This is not optional. This is not a nice thing to do. This is not when you get around to it. That is a required resource. Please get it now. There's a single textbook. It's been adopted at least twice, so I know there are all sorts of used textbooks out there. There is a new edition of this book, but we are sticking with the 2018 variant, and you see the ISBN. So please have it immediately. I want to point out that there are no online resources. You do not have to pay for access codes or connect or anything like that. You have a single resource. It is required. Please get it now. Now, in terms of learning objectives, I'm not going to suggest that those things are trivial, but that is, those things appear in most of our syllabi because the dean wants you to know how we're going to assess your progress. So I'm not really going to talk about the learning objectives. I want to move now to those administrative policies that impact you. So in the rules of engagement video, I was fairly crisp in giving you my perspective on cheating. I despise any form of cheating, and I will crush you like a bug if I have something that's evidential. I will never act on gossip or speculation or hearsay or anything like that. But if you violate our academic honor code and I have anything evidential, I will literally come down on you like the hammer of Thor. And I mean from Greek mythology, not from that stupid Marvel Comics franchise that's in the theaters. So I urge you to behave ethically, because you know that if I detect cheating and I have evidence for it, I'm not going to give you a 0 in the course. I'm going to submit an F for your course grade, and I will work vigorously to get you expelled from this university. Yes, of course, you can appeal, and we have no idea how that will play out, do we? But you are on notice. Behave ethically, please. We need to deal with the subject of attendance. If you see the topical sentence, I'm simply making a point that the university has articulated for 150 years. Attendance for all scheduled classes is mandatory. Sadly, we don't meet face-to-face. I would much rather have you in this room with me. But your attendance is, you have to verify your virtual attendance for absolutely every class. You see that point that the window for verification is 7 days? My gosh, I hope that you don't fall behind. But after 7 days, I will no longer consider that you have attended class, that you are so deep in a hole that you're not going to be able to dig your way out. Every time you send in an email that validates your attendance, your virtual attendance at a class, I will literally check you off on a roster for that class session. And after 7 days, that window closes. So that is the extreme limit, the farthest that you can push this from a time management perspective. I want to point something out that we're scheduled for 24 classes. University policy says if you miss 10% or more, there is an unappealable letter grade penalty. So for us, that means 3 misses. If you have 3 unexcused absences, 10% penalty unappealable. If you have more than 20%, that would be 6 classes here for this summer session. It's an unappealable 2-letter grade penalty. And of course, you can see the things that make an absence excused. I had a student in the spring semester that had some excused absences. She was in a very terrible accident, a significant accident with a vehicle. She spent 5 days in a hospital in Jacksonville, multiple surgeries. Well, of course, anything she missed was she could make up. But again, those are the criteria for excused absences. Electronic communications. I have one and only one university email address. It's on the syllabus, it's on Folio, it's everywhere. Easy to find. Do not ever send me anything in Folio or Tinder or any other stupid social media platform. One and only one university email address. I won't receive it if you use any other platform. Now, every time you send me a note, I'll acknowledge it. It may be simple. It may say, got it, thank you. But when you send me something, I'll acknowledge receipt so that you will know that I have it. Late submissions, you have a lot of due dates here. There is a window. If you submit things on time, hallelujah. If you are late, there's a 7-day window, 7 calendar days, and in that window, the grade that will be recorded is whatever you've earned minus a 15% penalty for the late submission. When you go outside of that 7-day window, your grade drops to 0. So on time is great. There is a provision for late submissions with a 15% penalty. After 7 days, it will not be graded. I'm going to scroll down because there are several other things I'm going to grade you on. So let me walk back to the console for just a second. So, you're going to be evaluated on 5 different component pieces. As you see from this presentation, there are going to be 2 article reviews. I will talk about them in a moment. They're worth 150 points. 2 midterms. You'll have a responsibility to develop a product market technology statement and a venture strain. You'll have to submit a venture journal, and you do have a final exam. So, you can see the way these things are weighted. For example, the venture journal is worth 25% of your course grade. So ideally, you're aiming for 1,000 points, and you can see the sort of a classical break as far as letter grades are concerned. So now I'm going to talk about each of these 5 tasks so that you have a pretty clear sense for what the expectations are. All right, there'll be 2 article reviews. Here is the short version. I'll show you this later on folio. You're going to use 2 scholarly articles as a very firm foundation for what you do with me in this summer session. One was published in the Journal of Management Education. The other was published in an engineering journal. But they coalesce on this notion of how do we as aspiring entrepreneurs search for and evaluate and discover commercializable ideas. So these 2 articles are very much heartbeat sorts of things. Both of the articles are already posted on folio, and the template for doing the article reviews is there. Again, I'll give you a brief look at it a little bit later. But the point is, I'm going to ask you to read those articles and do these reviews early on. The reviews would be 2 or 3 pages per article. But the point is, I want us to have a shared understanding. We have to speak the same language. So it is essential that early in the summer session, that you read the articles, write the reviews, and submit them to me. Moreover, we'll be going back to them significantly. But the article reviews give you that foundation. Midterm exams, there will be 2. They will be short essays. There's no way to, in my view, competently administer any sort of a multiple choice test in an online format. I'm not going to require that you do ProctorU or any of that other silly stuff. So what I decided to do, I did it the spring semester and I'm going to do it this summer. Every exam I give you will be an essay test format. I want to reaffirm something that you know. An essay test requires that you write a short essay in response. Giving me 2 sentences is not an essay. Showing me several bullet points is not an essay. Write a short essay in response to each of the questions. I have not made up the tests. Every question that I ask on every test that's delivered in an online platform is original. I'll never repeat these things, so you cannot go to any of those cheating websites like Chegg or Course Hero or anywhere else like a fraternity or sorority file and pull up Norton's exams. They don't exist. You may find stuff out there that I've done, but it is not anything that I'm being presented in this summer session. So every question, every test is original. It's important that you know that. Of course, you get to use all resources, get to use the textbook, your lecture notes. I know that students did this in the spring semester and I have no misgivings about it. Students will stop the test because my tests are not timed. There's a deadline, but they're not timed. So you can literally stop working on the test, go back and review a video. The kid that I'm thinking about told me that one of the questions in the spring was about franchising, and he remembered that there was an entire chapter that talked about franchising. So he went back to that video, opened it up, watched maybe 12 or 15 minutes, and came back and crushed it on the exam. So when I say all resources, I mean that, but zero collaboration. Yes, we knew early in the spring that kids were getting together and scheduling Zoom meetings so that they could cheat on multiple choice tests. You rats, you rats. So, not gonna happen this time. All resources, individual effort. And of course, they're not comprehensive. They'll only capture the materials studied in that segment. Let's think about a PMT statement and venture screen. We will talk about both of them in depth early, probably even in the first week. They are critical pieces of you evaluating the viability of any idea that you have, any concept that you want to bring to market. So I'll show you what each of those things looks like, and I will expect you to give them to me later in the semester. But I want you to understand that we're going to do that together. We will ride that pony together. I have to scroll down once more. That side heading that says Venture Journal. One of the two articles that we look at provides a lot of guidance on how you conduct a systematic search and the development of a venture journal. We're going to discuss these at length. In a 15-week semester, I would raise the standards. I would require significantly more work of you. In our time together in this summer session, I'm going to ask you, and you'll see how you search for and evaluate and discover an idea. I'm going to ask you to focus on a single concept, a single business idea that you'd like to bring to market. And you're going to wrap everything around that. You're going to wrap your PMT statement around it, the venture screen, the venture journal. So rather than casting a wider net, which is what systematic search is all about, you're going to get immersed in the technique. You'll know how to do it. But I want you to key on a single idea, so I'm really, I'm managing your time as well as I can. So the Venture Journal will be delivered at the end of the summer session. I think the due date is perhaps our last day of regular class. Final exam. I know it says it won't be comprehensive and the format is indeterminate, but since I drafted this final version of the syllabus, I've decided it's going to be an essay test, but my memory, and we'll look at it with you in just a moment, my memory is it only covers 2 chapters. So the final exam will be a substantially identical format to the 2 midterm exams. Now, let me run through this proposed schedule with you because I want you just to have an idea of how this is going to roll out. I should have mentioned this earlier if I didn't. Every class meeting has 2 identifiers. There's a session number. You see it presented parenthetically in the left margin. And then beside that is the class date that we would meet if we were face-to-face. So for the class meetings, that date is irrelevant. However, the reason it still appears on your syllabus is it is profoundly relevant for any due dates. Not just when I'm going to present stuff to you or the sequence, but a lot of these things relate to due dates. So every class meeting has 2 identifiers. One is the session number that's presented parenthetically, and the other one is the calendar day. So let me run through this with you briefly. Today is welcome and intro, and I'm going to do this entrepreneurship and leadership presentation a little bit later in this very presentation. You can see the last day for drop ad. Let me scroll down now. So from the 4th session forward, in fact, this goes on for until the 9th session. 6 times we will meet, and we'll talk about search and discovery, and you'll see the organization of that JME article has a body and then there are appendices. So we're going to focus on personal accomplishments, then a matrix, then consideration sets, a couple of other things. So 6 of our class meetings are going to key on this JME article that talks about how you would systematically search for an exploitable idea. Then on 3 July, just before you start a holiday, a profoundly important one because we celebrate the birth of this nation. On 3 July, I'm going to make a presentation to you on PMT statements and venture screens. You'll have one due later in the semester, but I want you to have a keen idea of what a product market technology statement is and what a venture screen is and how you would go about developing each of them. Then, on 6th July, or our 11th session, we'll jump into the textbook for the first time. We're going to talk about business models. Immediately after that, the next class meeting will be me making a presentation to you about business models. After that, I'm going to make a presentation on leadership, and I do that, you'll see this when I make this PowerPoint presentation a little bit later today. There is a clear link between entrepreneurial behaviors and leadership, and I hope that I can make that connection very, very clear in this brief presentation I'll make after this review of the syllabus and folio. So, because there is this clear connection, I want you to have a broader understanding of leadership. For many of you, leadership is an elective course and you won't take it, and that's unfortunate. I can't think of a single more important course in your undergraduate experience in business. Nothing is more important than Management 3235. And the people that teach leadership are extraordinary. They're just wonderful. Dave Sikora, who else teaches leadership? Gosh, you think I would think. Steve Scherler, I teach it occasionally, although I'm not extraordinary. A lot of great faculty, profoundly important content. So I'll make a PowerPoint presentation, you original content, nothing out of an instructor's resource. Then we go back to the textbook. Let me scroll down some more after session 14. So session 15, we're back to chapter 7. Session 16, middle of July, your first midterm, 3 chapters, 7, 8, and 10. Likely 4 essay questions, short essays. Then we go back to the textbook for the next 3 sessions, 17, 18, 19. We look at a chapter each day, then another midterm. Gee, imagine that. Then 2 more sessions in the chapter, legal and intellectual property issues, and then sort of a neat perspective on how you would pitch your idea to other people to be interested. Perhaps they're co-venturers, perhaps they're people in private equity. How do you pitch your idea? How do you present it to others and get support? Now, 22 July will be our 23rd session. That is our last actual day of class. On that day, I would expect you to submit electronically your venture journal, your PMT statement, and your venture screen. All 3 of those documents are due. So you will have had the entire summer session, almost 5 weeks, to work on those 3 documents. And as I told you, I've reduced the scope of them dramatically. So it will not work a hardship on you. And then our final exam will be on the final exam day, which is session 24. I think that's it for the syllabus. Let me take a quick look. It is. So, I've discovered that I can't exit this document and go to Dropbox, so I'm going to exit Folio and come back. I don't know why that's true, but it's one of those terrible loops. So now we're going to take a quick look at Folio. Or forgive me, not a Folio, but a Dropbox for our class. All I want you to see would take the form. I've opened up a folder for every graded assignment that you're going to have to submit. You can see that there's a folder for both of your article reviews, one for the management education article, one for the engineering firm article. There are folders for your 2 midterms. There's a folder for your PMT statement of venture screen, one for your venture journal, one for the final. Each of these exercises, or at least many of them, will appear in Folio. So what you do is you grab for example, you would grab midterm 1 from Folio. I'll post it on Folio. Grab midterm 1, do the exam, write the 4 essay questions if that's what I've asked you to do. And then you simply open up this folder and upload it from your device, if you did it on a tablet or laptop or whatever. So the uploading is a really simple approach. And of course, what I will do You know this because you've had this done before. What I will do is, when I grade your exam in real time, I will give you feedback. I don't take the exam down once I've graded it. I'll tell you what your grade was, and sometimes I might tell you something about it from a feedback perspective, and other times I won't. There may not be much to say. So you grab these things off of Folio, do the work, perform the task, and then upload them to the correct folder in Dropbox. And you will get real-time feedback when I grade the actual, whatever the task turns out to be. Now, as long as I have this up, I want to mention something about gradebook. And the reason I want to mention that is, for us, for this summer session, gradebook will not be operative. I simply don't use it. I don't like the way it's designed. The primary reason is, if any faculty member does anything where a score is weighted, anything other than just the raw score, what is posted is your weighted score. And I saw this once, and I'll never use it, ever. I had my memory is, I was teaching a class, and I think there were 3 midterm exams, and if you maxed the exams, you could have got 300 points. No surprise there. So, but they were weighted for half of the course grade. So 300 raw points became 500 points weighted in the calculation of the course grade. Well, obviously, to get from 300 to 500, you sum the raw scores and multiply them by 1.67. Boom, 4-function math. So the dilemma is, if you put that in gradebook, you have to put in the weights. So if I had a student actually that earned a 56 on a test, which is a terrible F, but the weighting showed it in gradebook as an 85, and she thought she was rocking along with a B. Sadly, no. So I think the design of gradebook is flawed, and I simply won't use it. Besides that, it's irrelevant. You don't need it. Every time I grade one of your evaluative tasks, I give you this grade and whatever feedback is in real time, and it's yours, privately. So there's no reason for me to wrestle with something that actually is deceptive. So no grade book for us this semester. So let me now, I've accomplished what I wanted to with us looking at the syllabus, us looking briefly at Folio, us looking at Dropbox. I'm going to now make that, I'm going to go back to Folio and make that short PowerPoint presentation on this relationship between entrepreneurship and leadership. And it will only take me a moment to get there. Here we go. So, this is a short original presentation. You can see the title. I've styled it as Leadership, the Soul of Entrepreneurship. That may seem cheesy, but when you see the next slide in this deck, I think you'll see the link. Joseph Schumpeter, the man whom I cite here, was an Austrian economist. The man was indescribably brilliant. His contributions to the domain of entrepreneurship, whether scholarly or whatever, are just, they're so significant I would call them biblical. That's how powerful Schumpeter's contribution was and is to the domain of entrepreneurship. So he wrote one of his excellent books in 1934. I Was Still a Baby. No, I wasn't. I wasn't born then. And I reread the book not long ago. And on page 8, I saw this statement, which I somehow missed the first time. I've taught leadership for 25 years. I've done it in the military and in business. I've done some meaningful scholarly research in it. I've been immersed in leadership for 2.5 decades, or actually for 5 decades when you reach back to my time in the military. So the point is, leadership matters to me greatly as a teacher and as a scholar. I missed this the first time I read his book. I'm on page 8, in this book that has great significance in the domain of entrepreneurship. And Schumpeter says, entrepreneurship is essentially a phenomenon that comes under the wider aspect of leadership. What he is saying, bluntly, is all entrepreneurs who engage in those behaviors are acting out leader behaviors. And I was stunned when I read that. This is not a leadership course. However, what I'm about to say is actually part of that overview presentation I'll make later in the summer session. The classic definition of leadership, there are millions of definitions, but probably the most compelling comes from a guy who was a scholar, Gary Uckel, who teaches in the SUNY system, the State University of New York system. Uckel's been doing high quality research in leadership for 35 years or more. Uckel's definition of leadership is a process in which an individual intentionally influences a group of collaborators to accomplish some group task. So it's simple, it's powerful, it's durable. Would an entrepreneur intentionally influence a group of collaborators to accomplish a group task? Yeah. If I can quote John Wick, I'm thinking, yeah. Forgive me. So Uckel's definition of leadership matches up with what entrepreneurs do. And in that same presentation that I'll make later in the summer session, I cite the work of a pretty talented guy named John Cotter. He was on the faculty at the Harvard Business School for 25 or 30 years. That's a 4th, 5th tier school up in New England somewhere. We don't play them in football. I think they have a chess team. I don't know. It's just, they're different, very different people, believe me. The Ivies are very different people. So, Cotter's work, really talented scholar, very seminal work in leadership. Cotter talks about the process of entrepreneurship. This is divorced from the work of Gary Uckel. This is a separate guy, and he said, here's what the process of leadership looks like. Leaders start by setting direction. They articulate a vision, some desirable future state, and then they develop a set of strategies to go from here, the present, to there, this desirable future state. Then the next thing they do is they build commitment. They communicate the vision in ways that energize people, that make them share and adopt those same values. And then they engage in behaviors that are motivational. They motivate people to accomplish the task. Okay, so is Cotter's description of the process of leadership strikingly similar to what entrepreneurs do? It is. And Schumpeter knew that 80-something years ago. Why didn't I see that the first time? So, bright guy, Joseph Schumpeter, his argument is that entrepreneurship is embedded. It is a phenomenon that comes under the wider aspect of leadership. His argument is all entrepreneurs are engaging in leader behaviors. And I'm fascinated by the clarity of that argument. It's powerful stuff. Now, I've got to go through this short series of definitions because I want you to think about this. Definitions are so central to what we do. This is not grinding up memorizations and just regurgitating it on a test. Definitions give us a shared understanding. For example, you and I could not be judges of a beauty contest unless we define beauty. Is that a fair statement? Are there some people who would describe beauty as attractive parts, physical attractiveness? Indeed there are. And if that's true, if that's how beauty is defined, beauty is a genetic gift. It's whatever God and your parents gave you. Now, others would say beauty is a look. It's the way that you accessorize, dress, fix your hair, microblade your eyebrows, or whatever other torture you go through. So there are people who would argue that beauty is a look. If it's a look, it can be acquired. We can buy it. Look at the Kardashians. No, don't. That scares me. Don't even think about it. Here's another approach in defining beauty. I would say to you, this is my definition, I would say that beauty is a matter of spirit. It's what's inside you. So it doesn't matter how you define beauty. If we're going to judge a beauty contest, we have to agree on the definition. What precisely are we evaluating? So definitions have enormous value in the organizational sciences. In fact, I'll talk about this later in the semester, this summer session. There are people who aren't as bright as you are that think that leadership and management are the same thing. Wrong! Not even remotely. But the point is, we need to be precise with definitions. So we start with Schumpeter's work. Schumpeter said 80-something years ago that the definition of entrepreneurship is the carrying out of new combinations. He literally put his work in italics, as you see it here. And then in the next sentence, he said, that is innovation. Loved ones, that's what innovation is. You, the entrepreneur, take stuff that already exists and you combine it in new ways that add value. So what that means is innovation is not the same as invention. If you invent something, you create something that didn't exist yesterday. New product, new process. So invention and innovation are not the same. I think, I have no love of Apple, but I think that the Apple iPhone may be a superb example of innovation. So I'm going to ask you all a bunch of questions that you can't answer, not at least directly to me. Did Apple invent wireless telephony? Did Apple invent the touch screen? Gosh, I've seen them in restaurants for 30 years. Did Apple invent digital music? I'm thinking no. Did Apple invent handheld mobile devices with GPS tracking and stuff? Of course not. Apple didn't invent anything. Apple took all these technologies that existed and it combined them into a single device. The iPhone, to me, is an excellent example of innovation, because what Apple did is they combined stuff that already exists in new ways that added value. So, Schumpeter's definition 80-something years ago, 86 years ago, whatever that turns out to be. So about 60 years after Joseph Schumpeter, Alex Stewart, who at the time was at Texas Tech, go Red Devils. You have to love a team where they say, guns up. Actually, you don't, but I do. So, Alex Stewart's at Texas Tech, well-regarded entrepreneurship scholar, and he said, I want to suggest a reconceptualization of the way we define entrepreneurship. So Stewart said, I think we should consider entrepreneurship as the creation of rents through innovation. Now, I'm going to inflict pain on you because I'm going to take you back to your econ classes. Rents is a term that comes from neoclassical economics. And I don't have time to interact with you. Gosh, I wish I could. I wish y'all were sitting there. I do. But rents in an economic context represent above average earnings. If your earnings are the same as everybody else in your industry, you're a car dealer or you have a fast frozen yogurt shop or something like that. The other people in your industry, if your profits are normal, they're about what the average is, those are normal profits. That's precisely why they're that. But if you have above average earnings, you are earning rents in the context of economics. So Stewart's saying that you have to have above average earnings, and you do it through innovation. Now, I think that was a useful attempt at redefining entrepreneurship, but there was an enormous amount of pushback, and I see the reasons why. Think of all the companies that haven't had above average earnings for years. Tesla is the poster child for goofiness. Tesla has been making cars for 17 years, 2003. They have yet to have a single year of profitability. They've had occasional quarters, but Elon Musk just keeps smoking those blunts on TV and making all sorts of crazy assertions on Twitter. And the stock value is stupendously high. Probably today something like $800 a share. Today Ford stock is $6 a share. Ford worldwide sells probably 6 million cars a year. In a typical year, it'll make 5 or 6 billion in net profit, and Tesla's stock is 40 times what its stock is, or more. So, and Tesla has not yet had a single year of profitability. Not above the industry average, but not a single year of profitability. So, the point is Amazon. Amazon is a magnificent success story. It's about a 20-year-old company now. And if memory serves, we could check this easily. It took Amazon 5.5 or 6 years to have a year of profitability. Okay, so a lot of businesses at an early stage don't make a profit in the early years. And since that is a reality, that defeats Stewart's attempt to say entrepreneurship is the creation of rents by innovation. Because he keys on this above average earning things. So now we come forward another 10 years from him, and this definition from Coven and Miles is now about 20 years old. By the way, Morgan Miles used to have an office on that hallway. I'm pointing to the hallway by the pedestrian. I'm on the ground floor of the Parker College right now. And he was here for 20 years. Good man, he's gone to some other university So he and Jeff Coben, who was at IU, go Hosers. I know they're Hoosiers, but I like my approach. They worked on a paper in corporate entrepreneurship, and they said, we want to propose a definition that says entrepreneurship is the coexistence of innovation and sustainable competitive superiority. Their argument was anything you did that gave you a competitive advantage, whether you're better at getting patents or growing market share, whatever the case may be, didn't have to be profitability. Anything you did that was durable across time and gave you superiority over your industry competitors was sort of this linchpin. So it was a good attempt. I don't think it's really been adopted, but I want you to look at this particular transparency, particular slide, and point out what you see that just resonates through all three of them. Innovation, innovation, innovation. Over 85 years, nobody has ever stepped away from innovation. Everybody fundamentally agrees that innovation is the centerpiece of entrepreneurship. You could, for the rest of your lives, and I hope they're productive and well in so many dimensions, you could literally consider those two words, innovation and entrepreneurship, to be perfectly interchangeable. They have that, they're that synonymous. So let me move on. When I developed this transparency, I got a little carried away. But I decided to retain it because there's still some things here that are valuable. If you look at the first bullet point on this slide, what I say to you is discovery and exploitation may best describe the process of entrepreneurship. The reason that's true, when I say discovery and exploitation, I mean you, as aspiring entrepreneurs, you search for and discover an idea that you think has commercializable value. And when I say exploitation, all I mean is that you take it to market. You don't just let it sit idle and unused and underdeveloped. Discovery means you find it, you search for and you find something that you think is a viable idea or concept, and the exploitation piece just says that you wrap a business around it and take it to market. There's nothing evil about exploitation. In other contexts, that can be an ugly word, but not in entrepreneurship or even in business. So, the reason that that's important, this notion of discovery and exploitation, the only people on the planet who engage in those behaviors are entrepreneurs. That's essentially the reason I decided to keep this on here. Now, everything else on this transparency I think is premature. You and I are going to take a deep dive into all this stuff, into domain competence, systematic search, everything about it. But I just think it's premature. I thought about purging the slide, but I wanted you to understand that the only people in the world who engage in those behaviors, search, discovery, exploitation, are entrepreneurs. College professors don't, managers don't. Only people who do that are entrepreneurs. Now, you don't have to answer the question. I thought that was a clever way of ending, and you can roll your eyes, and I'm okay with that. I've had teenagers. Schumpeter's assertion, the one that I shared with you early on, that he wrote in 1934, said that entrepreneurship is essentially subsumed. It's immersed in the domain of leadership. Do you think he's right? Do you think he's right? Perhaps after I make that leadership presentation later in the summer session, you'll have a better sense, a more clear look at the link between them. But it's a useful question. You don't have to answer it if you'll just reflect on it. So, we are done for today. I love you. That is authentic and sincere. I want to give you a heads up, and that is our next class session, whatever session 2 is on as far as the calendar is concerned. I'm going to kick open the doors on the first of those 2 articles. We're going to start talking about the Journal of Management Education article. Now, in that session, in session 2, I intend to go through the article not at any sort of lightning speed, but I'm going to scroll through the entire article with you in this kind of a format. I'll bring it up because it's posted on Folio. And I will show you what I think are the critical pieces of it. And I'll try to bring it to life in a way that you find understandable and satisfying. So our next class session will be a presentation from me to you on this article that's published in the Journal of Management Education. So that's it for today. Love you. Have a wonderful few days, and we will be together soon.